people have questions and concerns about how artificial intelligence is being used. And this morning, human resource professionals from around Siouxland gathered together at Briarcliff University to talk about the major topic. Now, the Siouxland chapter of the Society of Human Resource Management actually hosted this annual meeting just as a way for HR professionals to exchange ideas, they say, and it was also an opportunity to learn from industry leaders. AI is a growing resource for its members. The organization is even using AI in the workplace as a way to drive organizational growth.
Part of the reason that we do these conferences is those of us that have been in HR, our world and the world of work is constantly changing, and it's important that as HR professionals we stay on top of laws, regulations, and trends to help make us successful in our businesses.
And during the conference, HR professionals covered how AI can impact the workplace, enhance talent acquisition, and boost employee engagement.